Ani Bojo, welcome to our offices in Curve Lake First Nation, about an hour and a half northeast of Toronto. My name is Mike Jacobs. I'm the CEO of SIPS, and I'm really happy to be here today with you to discuss brownfield projects and Indigenous inclusion, and to bring that perspective to our roundtable discussion a little bit later. We were asked to sort of comment on the pandemic and how it might have affected the business and what we're doing. And when it comes to Indigenous inclusion, although the way we do business might have changed a little bit, meaning that we have new tools to engage and to consult and include and encourage participation, the reality is not much changed in the need for inclusion, participation, engagement, consultation when it comes to Indigenous communities. So there hasn't been a big significant shift or anything when it comes to this. So what I thought I'd do is just introduce 5 principles that I think are really important to Indigenous inclusion in brownfield projects, and then we can dive a lot deeper into those as we move along in our session today. So for me, there's 5 key principles that you want to hold on to. I've sort of tailored them a little bit to brownfield development so that they're a bit more relevant to you today. But the first one is always include real Indigenous engagement and participation early. What I mean by real is you can't just send a paper. You can't just send a letter or a piece of paper or a note or make a call and say, there, we've had our Indigenous engagement. You want to have real, fulsome discussions, thought exchanges, exchange of ideas, and I think your project outcomes will be much better. And when I talk about early, at the visioning stage, not after the designs have been done, and please comment on these designs. All of the work that's gone in there, we now have to catch up. And when you're catching up, you don't know whether all the information has been presented. So if we get in there early, it's a lot better. So that's one principle I'd like you to hold on to. The next one that I have is 1, give fulsome, truthful information that is understood by Indigenous stakeholders. You say, Mike, we're always going to give truthful information. What do you mean by that? It means that all of the information, transparency of the information, make sure that it's there presented in a real way, right? It's pretty easy to do a presentation and skim over some of the finer details that might matter. We want to know what those details are because they may matter. And if they do matter and we don't see them, then we might think you are being dishonest or not being truthful with us as Indigenous participants. The other thing is we need to have that information understood. If the information isn't understood and we get down the road and we said, well, we understood it this way and you said we understood it that way, the idea of trust and truth comes to light again. So you may be asked to help us to understand that. We may not have that technical capacity for certain contaminants or volumes or contaminants within our offices that need support. So think you might be providing that support as well. The third one, you must include traditional knowledge in environmental and land assessments. And you say, why do I need that? Traditional knowledge, 1, will give you more information. More information is always better than less when it comes to making a determination of what you're going to do with a site. So if you know more information, if you have a more fulsome view, a more well-rounded view of the contaminants, the land, the animals, the plants, the people, if you got a real overlooking view of all of these things together, like the Indigenous knowledge will give you, you're going to have a better project outcome at the end. You're going to have more understanding and more knowledge. The final one, or the fourth one here, sorry, not the final one, is ensure you have Indigenous participation in your reuse determinations. What I mean by that is, if you're looking for social return on investment, which many of us are now, it's kind of a core element in our business practices. What you want to do is make sure that you include Indigenous participation, whether it be cultural participation, financial participation, human resource participation, or all of the above, right? Your project is going to be better. It's going to be better received. It may actually touch on some funding that you weren't actually eligible for otherwise. So you may actually get cost advantages as a result, which can be helpful. My last one here is 1, secure active Indigenous participants in redevelopment implementation activities. When you're implementing your activities, ensure there's Indigenous participation. I have partners in brackets. That's the preferred method, right? Is to make sure that you have Indigenous partners. But I'm a bit softer than others in that, is that if you have participation, your outcomes are going to be better. all of the outcomes are going to be better. So make sure you have those inclusions. These 5 principles I want to drill down a little bit more on when we have our roundtable discussion. And you might say, okay, well, that's great, Mike. Can you give us a little bit about how we do this? Where do I start? 1, actively ask the questions. Find Indigenous stakeholders, ask them the questions of how, who, what, where, when, how, why. Ask those questions. That's going to build trust. It's going to build relationships, and you're going to get the outcomes you want. I'm looking forward to the roundtable easier for me to say, the roundtable discussion, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thanks to CBN for this opportunity.